Hi, everyone, and welcome back to ANHD's training around the Equitable Development Data Explorer, or EDDE, and the Displacement Risk Index. If you're just joining us, this is the third module of the series. My name is Alex. I'm obviously with ANHD, and my colleague, I'll allow my colleague to introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Abdul. I'm a graduate intern at ANHD.
And so the two of us are walking through all of the pieces of the Equitable Development Data Explorer. So far, we have in Module 1 looked at the background of the tool, how we got here, what the purpose of the tool is. And in Module 2, we looked at the very basics of the tool itself. What does it look like when you click on the web page? What do the different headers mean? How can you kind of click through it? And then in this module, Module 3, which we're calling My District, we're going to be looking at how to actually find our districts or the districts we're interested in studying in the Equitable Development Data Explorer. So just a quick overview. We're going through right now, how do I find my target community district on the map? What does it look like when I find that my district, and what data is available? So we're going to talk about the data tables, the data by race, and something that's called reliability data. We're not going to take a deep dive on all of that data in this module. We'll be doing that in an upcoming module. So if you haven't watched the first two, some of this information could be a little bit confusing. It will definitely be much clearer if you go back and watch the first two modules in the series. And that said, I am going to pass it over to Abdul.
Great. Thanks, Alex. So we're going to return to what we have for the Equitable Development Data Explorer, and that's going to be the main opening homepage, which is the community data view of the map. And so here you'll see a map with the city of New York, and you'll see boundary lines for the community districts. As a reminder, on this map, you're able to switch between the community district view, borough view, or citywide. For this example, we'll start with the community district, and then we'll move through some of the different scales as necessary throughout the training. And so the first thing that you should know about the community data tool, or the community data view specifically, is that it's a section of the EDDE that allows you to see population, demographics, housing, and quality of life information that's related to each of the different areas that you click on here. As mentioned, the different scales allow you to think about populations and the experiences they have at a very local or broader level. And having this kind of information is especially helpful because the EDDE provides it in a way where you can look at this information broken down by race. So in being able to do that, you can see the differences between what the total population is experiencing and what populations of specific racial identities are experiencing as well, which helps us be a lot more conscious of racial disparities that happen at different geographic scales in the city. In addition to that, there's a lot of data that the community data view provides. And once we start diving into more of that, when we give the next few modules, you'll be able to see the data tables that are produced from selecting one of the areas from the map. For this particular module, we wanted to show how to find a district within the EDDE. And in particular, we're going to use the example of Jackson Heights in northern Queens. Jackson Heights is part of a larger community district, so we will be using that example both to identify a community district here, and then later on, when we do the module on the displacement risk map, we'll keep using Jackson Heights as our example as a more specific neighborhood. One thing that's important to note about the EDDE is that it doesn't have a function to search for a specific address or search for a specific geography within it. So if you're not sure exactly what the boundaries are for your community district or your neighborhood when you're looking at the displacement risk map later on, then you might want to refer to another map to be able to help you find the exact shape and area of what you're looking for. So to help with that, I'm going to use one of the Department of City Planning's other data tools that's really helpful, called Community District Profiles. And that's a tool that allows us to identify a community district by looking up the name of that district or the neighborhoods that are in there, or even the specific address that you live at. So to get us started, I will send us over there by going to communityprofiles.planning.nyc.gov. And when we're on the website here, it's a pretty accessible website. You can go right to the middle and you're able to search for a district, neighborhood, or address. we already know that we're interested in looking for Jackson Heights. So once I type that in, I get a few options that pop up. But once I type it in entirely, I see that Queens 3 is the community district that Jackson Heights is located in. You can see that East Elmhurst and North Corona are also located within this community district. So when you're going there, just understand the community district levels are slightly larger than neighborhood levels, and may not reflect the entirety of what you consider your neighborhood, but may capture other places as well. And so when we look at this map, we see that Queens 3 is up here in Northern Queens, as we saw before, and it has this kind of, all of them are kind of blob shapes. This is the particular blob shape for Queens 3, and it's helpful to remember this and then go back to the EDDE. So knowing that it's in Northern Queens, knowing that it's in this top area, I'm going to go back to the EDDE map and zoom in a little closer. And so up here, I know that this is Northern Queens, and I have a rough idea that this blob is pretty similar to the blob we had on the community district profiles. When you select it, you'll see on the left that there's some information that's provided for you. The first set of information is this thing called PUMAs, and PUMA is just a term used by the US Census to identify a particular boundary. PUMAs at the census level kind of correlate to the shape and boundaries of a community district. So that's just information if you're interested in that. Underneath that, you can see the actual name of the community district or names of the neighborhoods within that community district. And what we see here is Jackson Heights and North Corona, which are the same ones that we saw in the community profiles. And then right underneath that, all the confirmation we really need is that it says Queens CD3, the same thing that we saw in the community district profile. So those are ways, if you're really unsure, you can triple check that way by looking on that information at the right. But that's how you can jump between those two tools to identify where you specifically live or where someone else lives if you're trying to help them out in learning about their community district. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do after you found that is just understand a bit about what you see on this left side. So once you select your community district, you're going to see 5 different categories for data. It'll be demographic conditions, household economic security, housing affordability, quality and security, housing production, and quality of life and access to opportunity. All very long phrases because they have a lot of information held into each of them. Each of these categories has the data that reflects what's going on in the community on an economic level, on a population level, on a housing level, and they're the sets of data that you're able to look at for the most part separated and broken down by race. So we'll start for an example, just so you can see what these pages look like, looking at the demographic conditions. So when you click on one of the data categories, your view shifts away from a map view, and instead you get a view of data tables. And when you see the data tables here, they're broken down in a way where there's columns that show, depending on the types of data, they might show data from different time periods. And then the rows show the different specific data factors that is being counted both by number and by percentage. What's really important about this view within community data is that if you look at the top left, you have the drop-down menu here that says total population. When you click on that, this is the area where you're able to start to see data broken down by race. And so if I was interested in learning more about the population in Jackson Heights and North Corona, specifically the Black non-Hispanic population, then I would click on that from the drop-down menu. And scrolling down here, the data tables have now shifted to reflect that specific population. I can do that again, say, with the white non-Hispanic population. And once again, the data table and the rows change to reflect that information as well. This aspect of the tool can be really helpful if you're trying to kind of separate from a broad or generalized idea about the community district you're in or the borough that you're in and get more specific to the different stories and experiences that are happening there. Another aspect of data that you'll see on this that you may be interested in if you're someone who's like a data wonk or you're just very excited about looking at numbers and statistics is this little button here that says show reliability data. And so if you look at the table now, it's just these 3 rows or these 3 columns for the different census and then the number and percentage there. When I click show reliability data, there's new columns that pop up for some of these tables that say MOE and CV. These are just terms that are specific to statistical reliability that you might be interested in. But for the large part, most of the data that's here is considered reliable by the standards of the Department of City Planning and the Housing Preservation and Development Department. If you are in a situation where you're looking at data and the table or a box in the table is grayed out, like a light gray, and I think I might be able to find one example of that, maybe. So there's an example here for like under 16 years in this area here. I'll try to highlight it. This is a grayed out area. So that might mean that the measure of reliability that the departments have for their data might be slightly lower for that data set, typically because maybe they didn't have a large enough population of people who they could count to make sure that that number was accurate or not. Once again, this is something that only if you're very, very interested in the data statistics stuff that you can hop into. But for the most part, just being able to look at the tables will get you everything that you need. And so that is a quick overview of how to both find your community district and get an understanding of what you see once you select it. What we're going to do in the next module is then go deeper into the community data view and start learning some information about Jackson Heights and North Corona. But before you hop to that module, we want to make sure that you do an activity for yourselves to practice seeing what it's like to look at your own community district. So we'll see you in the next module.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in the next module.